In our last session, we have discussed what is OOPS exactly. We have discussed what are the OOPS principle, just the basic definitions, and we have discussed what was there before OOPS, that is our procedural programming or modular programming. We have discussed what are the problems we face in our functional or modular programming languages, and how we can overcome those problems using procedural programming language. We have only discussed the theoretical concept in the sense that there is some reusability, there is some flexibility, simplicity, and maintainability issues, right? And we have seen that how the OOPS concept, how the OOPS principle is going to overcome those problems. But practically, we have not seen anything else. We have only just go through the introduction part, right? So, but from today onwards, we are going to discuss everything in detail. So today, first of all, we will learn about class and objects. And once we learn about class and objects, then we will move and we will understand constructors, because constructor is also important, and which is also a part of class and object. But a constructor, class, object are not part of your OOPS concept, right? These are the basic things, right? If you are creating a class and if you are creating object, means you are using a constructor. So before learning the actual OOPS concept, first of all, we need to understand what exactly a class, what are exactly objects, and how the constructor execution takes place in in our C# programming language. So with this keep in mind, let us start our session. So first we will discuss class and objects. Now, right? Before understanding what is class and object from a programming point of view, let us first understand what we mean by class and objects from layman's point of view. If you will ask this question to anyone, any programmer you have worked, then they will say you uh, from from programming point of view, they will say that it's a user-defined data type and instance of a class is called object. But from layman point of view, they will say that everything that you can see and touch in the real world, in the world, is an object, and there is a class for it, right? Whatever the things you can see and whatever the thing you can touch is nothing but an object, and that for that object there is a class for it. So what do you mean by there is a class for it? Let us try to understand, right? So classes comes from classification. So this is one of the important point that you need to remember. Classes comes from classification, right? For example, uh, if you take anything in the world, good morning, right? For example, if you take anything in the world, then you can say that thing belongs to so and so classes, right? So everything you can take that belongs to particular class. If you take a group of a student at a college, then you can say that this student belongs to computer science branch, right? That computer science class. This student, and here computer science is a class, and you can say this student belongs to electronics department or electronics branch. Then here electronics is nothing but a class, right? So here student are actual object, but these student belong to computer science, means your computer science is the class, right? Again, students are object, and this student belongs to your electronics class, right? So here electronics is the class. So here we are classifying based on the subject and the course they are going through, right? So we are saying that this student belongs to computer science. We are saying the students are the object, computer science is the class. Then how we are classifying the class? Class is classified based on the course they are going through. It means classification in this case is based on criteria, right? Now, if you take another example to understand the classification, so the classification is also done based on some criteria or based on some common things, right? We define classes in our daily life. See, if you are having a four-wheeler or any four-wheeler vehicle in which there is a driver and some people are sitting at the back and beside the driver, then we say it's a car. Yes or no? So car means four-wheeler, driver is there, behind the driver few people are sitting, and beside the driver one people is sitting. That means we can say it's a car. So this is the classification depending on the property that we are defining, right? So property in the sense one driver is there, behind the driver one person will sit, beside the driver two people are sitting. That means these properties will define that this is a car. right? So based on the properties, we can also define whether it is a car, whether it is a truck, right? And again, both this car and a vehicle, both this car and a truck are vehicles or not. Here, vehicle is the class. So based on the criteria, or you can say based on the common things, we can here defining that it is a class, right? So what are the common things? A common thing means they're having some wheel, right? They're riding. So based on the common thing and based on the criteria, you can decide whether it is a truck or whether it is a car. Again, whether it is a truck or a car, this is going to be a vehicle. So this belongs to a vehicle class, right? So classification. If you take another example for human being also class, right? There is a class called human, and you are an object of the human being class. So everyone, I am one object of human being class. You are one object of the human being class. But the point that you need to remember is the class doesn't exist physically, right? The class doesn't exist physically. What exists physically? Object exists physically. Whatever example we have taken, human being. If I'm saying human being, so it's not physically exist. But if I'm saying Pranay, if I'm saying Deepak, if I'm saying Pratik, these are the objects which exist physically, right? But for the existence of the object physically, you need a class, right? Class human. If human class is not there, then how you can identify that you are one object belongs to which class? You cannot identify now. So class should be there, and and existence of the class is nothing but your object, right? So let us see some more examples so that you will get some clarity. See, BMW is a car. Toyota is also a car. So BMW means one car having some number, having some feature. So that car exists physically. Toyota is also a car. So having some properties called the color of the car, number of the car, right? So this is a Toyota car. The design is also something different. So these are object of the car class. So class is a definition and object are its instance. But if I say car, can you tell what exactly a car means? See, car means it is having some properties, but its physical existence doesn't exist. But if I say BMW car means it's physically exists, right? Let's see another example for understanding this concept. See, some companies providing housing facilities to for their employees, right? It is not available in IT industry. In IT industry, company not providing home facilities to their employees. But if you are working for any government, if you are doing a government job, or if you are working in core sector, then in core sector and government employees, they are getting the facility of housing, right? Now, but the understanding thing is that suppose one uh, I mean if there are 100 employees, so they are building one apartment or they are building one cargo, then what you will see that all the apartments or all the cargos are looks wise or design wise similar. Why? Because they follow the same design, right? See, whenever we are planning to develop any apartment or cargo or a house, first of all, we need to design, yes or no. So we will make the design, and based on that design, we will construct our actual building, right? That design, what we made, either on the computer or either on pen and paper, is nothing but your class. And what constructed actually, the building actually, what you constructed, where you can stay, is nothing but your object, right? Object existence, right? So object existence is there, but design, you cannot stay in your design. In reality, can you stay in your house design? What blueprint or what design you have created? Can you stay in that design? No, you can't. To stay, you need the real world object, the real object. What is object? The constructed building, which is constructed based on the design, is nothing but your object, right? So that you need to understand. Class means it's just a blueprint. Its existence doesn't exist, right? To make that class live, what you need object. You need to create object based on the class. If class is not there, then what object you will create? You cannot create anything. So class existence should be there. But if class is there, object is not there, then the use of that class is useless. For example, suppose you prepare one design of for building a house, but you will never build any house based on that design, then what is the use of that design? It is useless. Yes or no? So every engineer, so design is nothing but the blueprint of the house object. So the house will be having all those things that are defined in the design. So how you make the design, when you prepare or when you construct the actual house, all those things are will be there inside your design, inside your constructed house. So every engineer does some paperwork or design work, and based on that design, the manufacturing is done. So you can take automobile. So whenever they want to create a new car, right? They are not developing the car randomly. First of all, they need to make the design of that car. Once the design of that car is finalized, right, then they can construct any number of actual cars based on that design. So what design they created, this is nothing but a blueprint, right? This is just a blueprint, you can say, and that doesn't exist physically, but based on that design, what you constructed, what you created, those are called object and those are exist physically. But the point that you need to remember, what you have inside the design, those things will be available inside your object. Nothing, no more, no less, right? So this is the point that you need to remember, right? Now, so these are the some definitions from layman's point of view. If someone asks you what is a class and what is an object, then you need to explain like this, right? Is that clear?
Yes,
Right?
sir.
Okay, so if
Yes.
someone asks you what is a class, what is an object, and I'm not a programmer, right? So in programming languages, people are saying class and object. Suppose in your academics, there are a different stream of people, right? So if other people, other stream of people ask you, so what do you mean by class and object? Then you need to explain like this. If you are saying that class is a user-defined data type, object is an instance of a class, then he will not understand anything because he don't know what is instance, what is user-defined data type, right? As a programmer, as a developer, we know this stuff, but non-programmer, non-developer, they don't know these things, right? If you want to explain them what is a class and what is an object, then you need to give this kind of a real-time example so that they will get some idea, right? Now, let us understand what is a class and what is a object from programming point of view. See, what is a class and object means it is not related or it is not specific to CSharp programming languages, right? So what is a class and what is a means, it is same in all programming languages. You can take all the object-oriented programming language available in the world, the definition of a class and object is going to be same. For example, C Sharp, for example, Java, C++, every programming languages, the definition of class and object is going to be same. What is? Now, class is a user-defined data type. And what is an instance? It is an instance. What is an object means? It is an instance of a class. Then why we are saying a class is a user defined data type? Sir, we have already data type, we have already learned data type like integer, character, float, right, boolean. Then what is a user defined data type? Now those are built-in data type. So integer, character, float, those are built-in data type. They are already created by the framework provided to us, and we can use those data type, right? For the particular purpose they are developed. For example, so they design the integer data type, means you want to store only integer. You cannot store any other data. They design the Boolean data type. You can store only true and false value. You cannot store anything else. But if you want to store employee data, right? Employee information. Employee information doesn't having a single ID or single name. Employee data means you have many information, right? Employee name, employee address, employee registration number, employee salary, employee date of birth, many things you want to store. Then you cannot store using a built-in data type. Why? Because using built-in data type, you can store only a single value. But if you want to store, then you will say that, sir, I can create an array where I can store multiple data. Yes, you can store an array. But the problem is that if you are going with array, then you can store only similar type of a data, right? For example, if you create an integer array, means you can store only integer data. You cannot store float string data inside an integer array. But here, if you are taking the example of employee, student, product, right? Here we are not going to store a similar kind of data. For example, mobile number is a string, but it might be possible that employee ID is an integer value, where name is a string variable. So we are going to store a different kind of a data. For that purpose, what we need to do? We need to create our own data type. One data type means as per our own requirement, we can store the values. If we want, we can store a single value. If we want, we can store multiple values. If we want, we can store similar type of values. If we want, we can store multiple different kind of values, right? Not only user defined allows you to store the data, but also it allows you to define some behaviors, right? So that behavior means, say, whenever I'm saying behavior, behavior means operations that you can perform on those data, right? So you can perform operations on those data. So simply speaking, you need to remember two things, right? User defined data type means it is having two things. One is state and another is behavior. State means data, behavior means method. Data means whatever the fields or properties or variables you declared inside your class is nothing but they are going to be said as state or data. And whatever method or functions you defined in your class is nothing going to be your behavior, or you can say operations. The point that you need to remember is whatever data you defined inside your class, those data going to be operated by the behavior defined inside the class, inside the time. So this is the point that you need to remember. So and one more thing, guys, if you compare this class with our real-time example, what we discussed, so this class is nothing but it's simply a blueprint, or you can say it's a plan, you can say it's a template, or you can say it's a design that describes the details of an object. For example, if you are taking the human, so here you can say human is a class, right? Then what humans describes about an object means, so whenever you are going to create an object of a human, so that object having some properties or having some state and behavior, having some data and having some method. What are the state and behavior means? You should have two hands, two legs, right? So he's having a head. So these are nothing but the data. And what are the behavior? He can eat, he can sleep, he can run, he can study, he can walk, he can play. So these are nothing but its behavior, right? So the same thing is also available in class. Class means it's just a blueprint, it's just a template. Its existence doesn't exist, right? But if you want to create an object, then the class would be there. Without class, you cannot create an object. And then what is the importance of class? Class will describe what are the properties and the behavior a object can have. So whatever properties, methods, variable, constructor you declared inside a class, those things are only going to be available to an object when you create an object of that class, right? So whenever you are going to create a class basically having three things. One is name of the class, or you can say name of the user defined data type. Practically we'll see attribute. Attribute means what are the variables, properties you declared inside your class, and operation. Operations means what are the functions, what are the constructors you define inside your class. So these three things should be there. Now, what is an object? Object already we discussed. It is an instance of a class. A class comes to be live. A class comes to its existence when you create an object, right? A class is brought live by creating an object. An object can be considered as a thing that can perform activities. See, using class, you cannot do anything, but you can define the thing what an object is going to be performed, right? Once you create an object, then that object is going to perform the things which are defined by the class will define that I'm creating one object of a human class, and I'm providing the activities operation that he can only sleep and he can only read, no more functionality, right? Then when you create an object of the human class, then that human class can only have a read and sleep, no more other functionalities, right? That is the point that you need to define. So you cannot make anything else, right? You cannot define that the object is going to eat, object is going to play. These things are you cannot perform because these things are not defined by the class. For example, you are designing one car, right? So whatever the design, whatever you want the design, once you created the car, you need to follow the design. So whatever the functionality, whatever the features provided in the design of the car, those functionality, those features are going to be available only while you are manufacturing the car, right? This is the thing that you need to understand, right? The, and then to access the class, you need dot operator. Actually, the dot operator, what exactly the dot operator will do is it will link the object name with the operations that you want to perform. That is, it will link the object with the member of a class. That member might be a data member or might be a member function. So it will make a link. We'll see this thing practically. Now, suppose you want to create a class, then how you are going to create a class and how you are going to create an object. To create a class, you need to use the class keyword, right? To create a class, you need to use the class keyword followed by the class name. And inside the class, you can define your data member and member functions. Inside your class, you can define your data member. Data member means you can declare variables and properties. Member function means it might be a simple function or it might be a constructor. We'll see all these things coming forward. So in this case, if you want to create a class, class means it is going to be created using the class keyword followed by the class name, and inside the class member are there. Class member means it can have any data member, member variable, member function, constructor, etc. But this is going to be your template. It's independent. This class doesn't do anything, right? Then how this class comes to life? Now, whenever you create an instance, so second part is showing creating the object, creating an instance of this class, right? So when you create an instance of this class, then this class comes to life. Live means now you can consume the class. So if you want to consume the class, then creating an instance is mandatory, right? Because without instance, this class is useless, right? But if you want to create the instance, then the corresponding class existence should be there, right? So the same way, if you want to construct a build, if you want to construct a house, then the house design should be there. So this is your constructed house. This is your house design. If you want to build a car, right? This is your car, but this is your car design, right? So this is your students, right? This is your computer science student. This is your computer science class, right? So this way you need to understand. Now, so how to create an object means to create an object, you need to use new keyword followed by the constructor, right? Constructor will discuss after some time. But for understanding now, in order to create an instance of a class, what is mandatory? Two things. One is the new keyword and another is the constructor. What is the role of a new keyword and what is the role of a constructor? That we will see with practically, right? So here you can see this is the calculator class. So you can say this is the blueprint or a template or a design, right? So, and this is your object, right? So here you are creating an object of the calculator class. So to create an object of the calculator class, okay, let me define some variables here. Integer x, then boolean, then I'm declaring some boolean y equals to false. See, so now you can see this class having two data member and one member function, right? And this is just a blueprint. If you are not creating any instance, then this class is never going to be used, right? And it's never going to be used means it will not allocate any memory inside the computer. You cannot do anything with this calculate sum or any you cannot consume this calculate sum or this x and y variable directly, right? If you want to consume this x, y and calculate some variable, then what is mandatory? You need to make this class live. And how you can make the class live, how you can make the class to be consumed by other classes in your application. Now one and only one, what is that way? You need to create an instance, you need to create an object. See, object and instance are not different. So whenever I'm saying instance means it's an object, and whenever I'm saying object means it's an instance of that class. So both are going to be same, so don't be confused with the word instance and the object. Now, so here, please observe, this is your new keyword and this is your constructor. So the object creation statement is composed of two things. One is new and another is calculator. What is the role of new means? It will create the object and it will allocate memory for your data memory. It will create the object and it will allocate memory for your data memory. So in this case, how many data member are there in your class? Two data member. And how many member functions are there? One member function. So it will create one object. So in this case, what will happen? One object will be created with that X value. See, one object will be created. One is our variable X and one is variable Y. So it will allocate some integer, na? So it will allocate some 4 bytes of memory. So inside the computer, it will allocate 4 bytes of memory. And for Boolean, what is the size? Can anybody tell me? What is the size of the Boolean data type?
One byte.
Yes. So it is going to create some memory inside the, I don't know whether 1 byte or 2 byte, but let's assume it is 1 byte. So it will allocate 1 byte of memory inside this object, right? So this is the memory location is going to be created. Right? So X and Y, right? And this is going to be your object. So this is going to be your object. So this is nothing but your object. So object, when the new statement is executed, it will allocate some memory inside the computer, right? What is the memory? So memory for X is 4 bytes, for Y is 1 byte, right? So this is the role of a new operator, allocating memory. Then what is the use of a constructor? Constructor is basically used to initialize the data memory, right? Constructor is basically used to initialize the data memory. Now you can see. So here we are not initializing X with any value, but we are initializing Y with the value false. Then what will happen? Now in X, what is the default value of a numeric data type? 0 is going to be stored by the constructor, and we are initializing Y with the value false. So false is going to be stored, right? So whenever these two statement is executed, the role of a new operator is to allocate the memory for the data member that you have defined inside your class, and the role of a constructor is used to initialize those data memory, right? Initialize those memory locations which are created by the new operator, right? If the new operator created two memory location means the constructor mandatory need to initialize those two memory locations, and it's depend whether you are initializing with some value or not, right? If you are initializing with some value, then that initialized value will be stored, and if you are not initializing with value, then that default value is going to be stored, right? And once you create the object, that means this memory location is created, then you can access. So call object dot calculate sum. So this call object means it will make a link. So here you are saying call object, right? So call object means this is your call object, right? So this is your call object, and this will point to this memory location. Suppose the address of this object is 1000, right? Then this 1000 will be pointed by this call object, right? So this 1000 means it is pointing to this one. Now, so xy, not only xy, it is also going to create the variables. But the variable memory allocation will not be there, right? But it will create the variable. It will see that there is something called variables, right? Calculate sum, right? So these things are going to be created. Now when you invoke the calculate sum method on the call object means what? Now means calculate object pointing to which memory location? It is pointing to this memory location. So invoking call dot means, so dot means what? Now it will make a link. It will make this object linked to this variable linked to this object, right? So dot means it will make a link to this variable to this object, and after the object, let me close this one. Okay, after the object, what you are doing? You are invoking the calculate sum method. So it will check, is there any calculate sum method available inside this object? Yes, available. Then it will invoke that method. If this calculate sum method is not available inside this memory location, then you will get a compile time error, because compiler no, there is no such method available. For example, let me give calculate sum 2. Is there any method available with calculate sum 2 inside this memory location which is created by this statement? No, there is no such calculate sum 2 method. So compiler will give you error, right? So this is how you can create an instance, and this is how what is exactly your class is, right? So let me copy this statement. Okay, all right. Okay, now let me copy this image so that you will have some reference. Okay, right. Say this is how you are defining class. So you need to use the class keyword and followed by the class name. Inside class you can declare data members and a member functions, right? These are the data member and this is going to be your member function, and this is how you are going to create the instance. You need to use the new keyword followed by the constructor, and once you create the object, right, this is going to be your object creation statement. We are just storing that reference inside this reference variable, then we can consume the class member. When you create the instance, then only this class comes into picture. If you are not creating this class, then you cannot consume this data members or this member functions. So this is all about class and object. Is there any doubt related to what is class and what is object?
Suresh, I have one doubt.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, so when you create this class object, so when we initialize it, so
Mhm.
there will be a memory location allocated for particular class blueprint. So
Right.
when we like call object dot calculate sum, when we call that, how the
Mhm.
compiler comes to know that okay, this class blueprint is there in this specific location? How it will find
See,
that?
see, see. So it is not going to look this blueprint, right? Right. So basically, when this statement is executed, na. So before coming to this statement is going to be executed, right? So if you look at this, so this is nothing but new calculator. When this statement is executed, this memory, these things, what you can see, right? Yeah, yeah. So what Praveen, you understand? That is fine. That is the same. See, when the object is created, right, these things is going to happen inside the computer memory, right? So here, when the constructor statement is executed, you can see memory allocated, object is created, object having some base address, and that base address is stored inside this calculate object, right? So if you look at this, so I can store the base address 1000, and the name of that memory location is calculate object, right? And this calculate object now holding the address of which memory location? Which memory location it is pointing to? Hello, guys? Yeah. So now my voice is audible.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes.
So see, whenever the object is created, in this case, two statements are executed. One is new operator, another is constructor, right? When the new operator is executed, so it will allocate the memory for the class member. So there is something called X variable, so it will allocate 4 bytes. There is another variable called while, it will allocate 1 byte of a memory location, right? And inside that memory location, and another member function that is calculate sum that is going to be created inside inside the heap memory. So this is nothing but your heap memory, right? Heap memory. We have already discussed heap memory. And this object having some base address, let's say 10 or 1000, right? And when the constructor is executed, so it will basically initialize those data members. Constructor responsibility only initializing the data members of a class, no more functionality of the constructor. So it will initialize this memory location with the value 0, and it will initialize this memory location with the value false. This is the constructor, right? And then, so once this statement is executed, then this assignment operator will be performed, because uh, so this is the priority first. So, suppose this statement, two things are executed, then whatever value inside this expression, that will be stored inside this variable. For example, if I'm creating integer x equals to 100, right? Then what will be stored inside x? Inside x, this value 100 will be stored. Yes or no?
Yes.
So in this, similarly in this case, this is this is a built-in variable, or you can say built-in data type, and here it is a user-defined data type, right? But both are going to be data type only. It's a built-in and it's a user-defined data type, and this is a built-in variable. So this is a variable. Similarly, it is also a variable. This is a built-in type variable. This is a user-defined data type variable or reference type variable, right? As it's a value type or built-in type variable means they hold the value directly. As it is a class type or reference type or user-defined data type means they are not going to hold the value directly. They are going to hold the reference. Reference in the sense, in this case, this is your object. So when these two statements, when these things are executed, new and calculator constructor, then these things is created inside the memory, right? X variable is there, Y variable is there, calculate sum method is there, but this is nothing but your object. This is the memory allocation is done inside the heap memory, and this object or this memory location base address is 1000, right? So this 100 1000 is going to be stored inside this calculate object reference variable. Is that clear?
Yes. Yes. Yeah. That's clear.
Okay. Now that means this calculate object, this memory address pointing to this one. Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. So if I am saying, okay, okay. So here calculate object dot x I can access, calculate object dot y I can access, calculate object dot calculate some method I can access. So when I say calculate dot x, what it means, 1000 dot x. Yes. So what is 1000? 1000 is the base address of this object. So in this memory location, in this 1000 memory location, is there any variable called x? Yes, x is there. Get the value of that variable. In this case, what will happen? 1000 dot y. Right? So in this case, in this memory location, is there any variable called y? Yes, get the value. In this case, what will happen? Now 1000 dot calculate sum method. Is there any method inside this memory location? Yes, there is a method. Then invoke that method. So whenever you are saying calculate object dot calculate sum means what is the value stored inside this calculate object means it's a base address of an object. Then please go to that base address and try to invoke this calculate sum method if available, right? And compiler already know whether this method is available inside this memory location or not. How compiler know? The compiler know because whenever you are creating the object, you are specifying the template. You are specifying the template. Template means calculator class. So you are specifying the template. So compiler know, yeah, this is the template. So in this template, what are the things available? I know, right? So whenever you are invoking those things, the compiler know. So because we already give information to the compiler that we are creating an instance of this template. So here this statement means we are saying compiler, hey, Mr. Compiler, please create an instance of the template calculator. That means compiler know. So in this calculator template, what are the things available? And then when you invoke compiler know, yeah, this calculator or object I have created based on this template, and in this template these are the things available, and this thing is also available inside that template. So let's compile this application. And if I am writing to like this, then compiler know, yes, this method is not available inside this template. Let's give them a compiler error, right? And even you cannot access this x and y variable here, right? Why? So you cannot access x and y variable here because compiler know there is some variable called x and y, because he's also known that variable you cannot access from outside the class because you have not declared them with any access specifier. And whenever you don't declare any access specifier, then by default those are going to be private. And if you want to access from outside the class, you can use public or other access specifier. So in this case, you cannot access x variable, but you can access the y variable because you declared y as public. Okay. Right. So you can access the variable of y here, but you cannot access the variable of x, right? So you cannot access like this. So if you try, then you will see that one error. What error? Accessibility. Protection level. Calculate x is inaccessible due to its protection level. So compiler know everything, right? When you compile the application, compiler know what is the template, what is the object, what are the memory allocation is done, which are accessible, which are not accessible. Everything compiler know, right? So in this way you can access, right? So you need to create an instance, and in this reference variable, this object reference is stored, and using that object reference we can access all the public members that are available inside this object. Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, so few people are still doubt. So what is the difference between class and the object? Already we have discussed class is just a template. Class is just a blueprint, right? It doesn't exist physically. If you want to make or if you want to bring that class live into your application, then you need to create an object for that class. For example, here class, you can say we declared one class employee having some fields, properties, methods, right? Independent, this class is nothing, right? If you want to bring this class into live, then what you need to do, you need to create object of this class. You can create any number of objects, but the thing that you need to remember, whenever you create object, then whatever the properties, fields, method that you defined in your class, that means whatever the blueprint contains, all those things are available inside the object, right? For this EMP1, these things are available. For EMP2, these things are available. You can create any number of objects, no matter. For each object, all those things are available. right? So just class is just a blueprint or a template for creating object. And what is an object? An object must belongs to a class. And for a class, you can create any number of objects. Is that clear? Clear or not?
Yes, yes, yeah.
Okay, so please, so the point that you need to understand, in your book definition, you also find that class is a blueprint for an object. So blueprint means it's just a design, you can say, it's just a template, you can say, which defines the things what a object can have, right? It cannot have its own thing. You cannot consume class directly. If you want to consume class, means you need to bring that class live into your application. How you will bring that class live into your application means you need to create object of the class. So once you create the object, then what is the blueprint? What is the template have? All these things comes into picture, right? So you can give these examples what we have already discussed. You can take car, you can take uh, I mean house example, you can take human example, everything you can take, and then you can explain the things like this. So this is nothing but your class and the object. Anybody having any issues related to class and object? What is a class? What is an object? Class and object from layman point of view, class and object from a programming point of view. From programming point of view, you can say a class is an user defined data type. Your calculator is a class. You can say calculator is a user defined data type, or you can say class is a blueprint, right, or a template which defines the properties, behavior that an object can have. Then what is an object? An object is an instance of a class. When you create an object means we are making that class into life, right? And once you create an object, then only we can consume the class member. And once you create an object, then only the data member variable location and whatever the method you define, they get some memory, right? And once the memory allocation is done, then only we can consume the memory allocation, right? Then how to create an instance or how to create an object? To create an object, two things is required. What are the things? One is a new operator and one is a constructor. What is the use of a new operator? New operator is basically used for allocating the memory for the class member, right? And what is the use of a calculator? Calculator, I mean, what is the use of a constructor? Constructor is basically used to initialize the memory location which is created by the new operator. If the variable is initialized with some values, then it will initialize the variable with those values. And if the variable is not initialized with any value, then it will initialize those variables with the default values. Is that clear?